So you've just turned up to work and you found out the person that you've been booked on with is injured. Now what? I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Today, I want to offer you 3 perspectives on what would happen if you found yourself in a position where you've been asked to go to the ring and perform with someone who is in some way, shape, or form indisposed. They might be ill, feeling under the weather, or otherwise injured, and yet they've still been professional enough to show up and meet their obligation. So the first perspective I want to offer you on this circumstance is that of the promoter. And I've promoted hundreds of live events in the course of my career, and I understand a certain obligation that we feel as promoters to present the card the way it has been advertised to the public, to give the paying customers what they paid for. And the reality of what we do as professional wrestlers is that sometimes you must go to work when you do not feel great, when you are a little under the weather, or you are carrying an injury but you have not been barred from performing by a medical professional. And in furtherance of that, I do want to let you know I am working on a separate video specifically about concussions, and that's coming sometime soon, but I will not address that in this video here. So, when a performer turns up to a card I happen to be promoting, and they present themselves and say, "Hey, I am here, however, I am injured. This is wrong, this is sprained, this is torn, that thing is broken," or whatever it might happen to be. However, they have taken the time to show up at the venue, make call time, and make an accounting of themselves like a real professional. My overwhelming feeling in these circumstances is gratitude. I feel very grateful that the talent has shown up, as opposed to those mornings when I wake up and discover I've got a bunch of text messages or someone imagines that I've gone wading through my inbox to get past all the spam about pills from a Canadian pharmacy to discover that email about, "Hey, I'm not coming to your event." So yes, my initial instinct in these circumstances when a performer does turn up even though they are injured is that I feel very grateful they are there. And my second instinct is to go to work putting together a scenario in which they can go to the ring and they can perform even if it's in a very limited capacity, and yet we can keep them safe. We can protect them from doing further injury to themselves. As someone who has produced and promoted live professional wrestling over the years, I know that there are those circumstances in which it is impossible to send that person out to the ring because of the nature of the injury or the illness that they're suffering from. And yet there are other circumstances where it is entirely possible, if everyone works together, to create a scenario in which we can deliver the card as advertised. So let me offer you now a second perspective, and that is when I myself have been the performer turning up to a card knowing that I am injured or otherwise indisposed, yet still hoping to make an accounting for myself to whomever is in charge. Whenever I happen to incur an injury, I immediately take a look at my own calendar 2 weeks out, and anyone that I am booked on with in those next 2 weeks, I reach out to the organization and whenever possible my actual opponent, and I inform them of the fact that I have incurred an injury. And if the injury is especially serious and it causes me to have to cancel, of course, I want to take care of that right off the bat. But for the purpose of this video, I want to cover the circumstance in which I'm going to the card. I intend to go, I intend to honor my booking, and I'm going to attempt to perform to the best of my ability, despite the fact I know I have some kind of injury. And so that the people in charge have maximum flexibility, I want to try to alert them as far out as humanly possible, which is why anytime I have any sort of injury, I immediately look 2 weekends out on my calendar and I start contacting all the relevant parties so that they are completely appraised of what's going on. Even if in that moment I am telling them, "Hey, I have been injured, I will not make it to the doctor until Monday morning, but I wanted to appraise you of the situation in case you would prefer to start assembling a plan B." This particular method of mine is born out of my experience as a promoter and producer of a live event. When someone has a serious injury, but they wait until 12 hours before the live event to tell me that, now I have very little time to try and assemble a plan B if that is my choice. The likelihood that 12 hours out, I could contact alternate talent and get them to the venue on time the following day, or later on that same day, is extremely unlikely. That is not a reasonable window of time, in my opinion, to be appraising the people that you are working for that you may not turn up at 100%. In those instances where I am the one turning up to the venue knowing that I will not be able to perform at 100%, I need to put myself at the mercy of the event's organizers. If they decide to make the decision in that moment that, no, we are not going to send you to the ring given the nature of your illness or given the nature of your injury, I must respect that. In most cases, I know that they may ask me to appear in front of the crowd so that it does not appear to them that something dubious has taken place. Look, we advertised that Mike would be here. He is in fact here, but he is unable to compete. And generally speaking, when we offer a certain transparency to the audience on those facts, they are generally fairly forgiving. This exact thing happened to me in this very building earlier this year. There was a bone that was out of place in my left hand, and I was certain it would be wildly irresponsible of me to think I could keep my opponent safe knowing that my hand was essentially malfunctioning. And so I had to make an accounting for myself in front of the paying customers to say, of course I am here, and if I were physically able to honor my obligations, you can be certain I would be in the ring. But I am not. And so the responsible choice is for me to bow out and allow somebody else to take my place in the match. And in that instance, the audience was very understanding. And last but not least, I want to offer you a third perspective on this, and this is the scenario in which you turn up to find out the person you are booked against is the one that is injured. In these instances, I think you need to be immediately prepared for this circumstance. You may have spent days or weeks or even months brainstorming ideas for this particular match. You were looking forward to working with them, or perhaps this match has special significance either to you or to the organization that is putting it on. You've probably put a little forethought and creative energy into what the match might contain. And in the moment that you find out your opponent is injured or otherwise indisposed, you've got to be ready to immediately discard all of those ideas. In those cases where I have been asked to go to the ring and perform with someone who is under the weather or happens to be injured, this is how I go about tackling that problem. Number one, what is the nature of the injury? What can you tell me about your condition? As an example, the person that I am booked on with turned up today, but last night they sprained their ankle and it's swollen up. So they're going to have to put some kind of extra protection around their ankle. Maybe they can't even tie their boot entirely, and yet we are still going to attempt to go to the ring and put on something that resembles a professional wrestling match because that's what's been advertised and the public expects it. In that scenario, my initial instinct is to revert to my own philosophy about chain wrestling. And if you've ever taken one of my chain wrestling seminars, this is familiar to you. I divide the body up into 4 regions because 95% of all the holds that I happen to know, which are considerable in volume, fall into one of 4 zones. And those zones are the legs, the midsection, the arms, and the head and neck. So if the person that I am booked on with says to me, my ankle was sprained last night and it's giving me a lot of trouble, my initial instinct will be, I'm going to move a minimum of 1 zone away from that when designing the match. So, in the example of a sprained ankle, I'm going to move my offense at least to the midsection, but in this case, I could move even further away. I could center all of my offense on the arm, or to get the maximum distance away from the injured or compromised area, I could go all the way up to the head and neck. This puts me as far away from the injured area for the majority of the match as possible. And then I want to consider what the domino effect of, in this example, a sprained ankle might be. Well, my initial reaction to that would be, we can't run the ropes, or at least my opponent can't. So that might mean I'm going to do all the running. Well, what if someone turns up and they've sprained something in their lower back? Well, that might say to me, I'm going to be taking all of the bumps, and my opponent is not. Or what if they turn up and last night they hyperextended their elbow? Well, to me, that says I'm going to make sure that I stay away from that zone entirely, and whenever possible, I'm not going to count on them to do any kind of strikes, because I don't want to do anything that might further compromise the injured area. My firsthand experience with this has been, sometimes I turn up very much looking forward to the match I thought I might be having, but in the moment that I discover the person I am booked on with is injured or otherwise indisposed, I've got to take all of my ideas and preconceived notions and toss them. And I realize for all of us sometimes that can be a little bit disappointing. You imagine that you would have a match that's a little bit like this, but today it turns out you're going to have a match that's a little bit like that. But that's part of being a professional wrestler. And sometimes going to work when you're injured or indisposed is part of being a professional wrestler. Keeping your obligations, showing up and making the dates where you're expected to be, even if, after you do so, the people in charge decide they are not sending you to the ring. So maybe at your next booking, you're going to turn up to find a scenario like the one I have just described, where your opponent is injured, and all the brilliant ideas that you had brainstormed up are going to have to be discarded. Yes, allow that sense of disappointment to cascade over you for a moment, and then let go of it. And remember this. One day, it may be you turning up to a card feeling less than 100%, but still determined to honor your bookings. And somebody is going to take great care of you when you're in the ring, because that's what we do as professional wrestlers. No matter what the conditions are, we're going to go out to the very best of our ability and make our opponents look awesome, no matter what the demands of the day or the card might happen to be. I hope that you're finding the insight and the experience that I share here on Till We Make It to be of benefit to you no matter where you are at in your journey as a professional wrestler. And I need your help. Please share this channel with fellow professional wrestlers. It is for fellow pros that I make this, that I deliver it 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And maybe together, by spreading ideas that we all feel have value, we can make professional wrestling better overall. If you're on board with this mission, drop me one of these on your way out the door. Hit subscribe and ring the notification bell. YouTube loves when you do that, and I will love it too. You keep on being awesome, and I will keep on making the videos. Together, we'll keep on faking it.